Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good evening, everyone. Before we get started in the Dharma class, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good evening, everyone, to our Sutra study class on the Amitabha Sutra. Trying to think of its Sanskrit name, and it's failing me right now. Doesn't matter. No one's going to remember it anyway. But we are still in the very first part of the sutra of introducing the sutra and the 16 arhats and the bodhisattvas that are in the introduction of the sutra. And so we will continue with Anagarika, Quang, Hien, excuse me, going over the stories and explanations of the arhats and the upcoming bodhisattvas. So I believe today he will go ahead and cover 4 arhats. Then we're almost halfway there. Luckily, the stories of these arhats get shorter and shorter, since they kind of, they almost go in most important to least important, almost in this list of arhats in the sutra. Really, but not really. But either way, the stories behind these arhats give a little bit more insight into the lives of the disciples during the time of the Buddha, and kind of the circumstances that led them to their monastic life, right? Because all of these arhats, all the bodhisattvas, all the people that are mentioned in pretty much every sutra were non-Buddhist by birth, right? They all kind of came into the Dharma of Shakyamuni Buddha. And these arhats, of course, are no exception to that. And so knowing at least the reason why I'm going through their stories is just to kind of help us clarify, to see, like, it's not everyone's story that they've come into Buddhism, that they came into enlightenment kind of by birth or by right or by tradition, right? There was causes and conditions that led up to that. And as we'll go through a couple of the stories today, that we'll see that enlightenment is not something that we hope for by itself, right? It requires our own effort. It requires our own search on this journey and our own diligence to practice in order to attain that enlightenment. So there's some work behind it. And so that's one of the reasons why we want to tell these stories, is to tell some of the work that these individuals who have attained enlightenment went through, to know of their struggles, to know of their hardships, and of what they kind of went through in order to get to where they got to, right? Likewise, our own lives have causes and conditions that had led us to the Dharma, and it will also continue to have causes and conditions that will lead us to enlightenment. And so the path, the journey that we're on is going to be a difficult one, but it's not impossible, as we can see through these stories, right? And we know these individuals have attained full enlightenment. And so we aspire to essentially follow in their footsteps in a way, right? It's a little bit more difficult in this day and age to live simply, It's an understatement, obviously, but it is definitely not impossible. And so I hope that these stories kind of bring some sort of encouragement, some inspiration into our own practice so that we know that we have the capability to practice. We may not become fully enlightened as Buddhas in this one lifetime, but enlightened enough that you know the true path, that you know that this is the correct journey that you're on. And so then life for the rest of your life becomes easier. In future lives, it becomes easier and easier to come upon the Dharma. And that's essentially how the stages of enlightenment work, right? You become a little bit enlightened in this lifetime. It may have taken you 60 years, but the next lifetime, coming to the Dharma and becoming enlightened becomes much easier. And you become enlightened maybe at 50, and the lifetime after that at 40, and the lifetime after that at 30, and so on and so forth, where you no longer have the repetition of coming back to samsara. You're just fully enlightened. So anyway, without further ado, I will go ahead and give the platform to Quang Hien, and he will go ahead and continue on discussing the remaining, or the next set of arhats he has.
Okay, so I have 4 of them for today. Just real quickly, I'll go over the first 3 that we talked about. We talked about Shariputra, Mahamagdalena, and Mahakashyapa. One thing I noticed in these studies is that each one of these arhats, they all represent something. So previously, Shariputra was foremost in wisdom, Mahamagdalena was foremost in spiritual powers, and I said last time that Mahakashyapa is foremost in ascetic practices. So I guess we'll see as we go through all 16, each of them have something they were foremost in. So today we'll start with Mahakatyana, where his name means great literacy elegance, to where, well, we'll get into what that means later, but he was born with the name Nalaka. He was the son of the king's advisor of the state of Avanti. And he was born to a Brahma family, and because of that, he grew up with a traditional Brahmic education. He studied the Vedas, which was the Indian philosophy at the time. And I've noticed that most of the arhats in their lay life, they did study the Vedas, so I plan to go over kind of what that means, because I myself don't know what it means, so it'll probably be better to figure out what the other schools of ideas were at the time. So I plan on going over that in a future session. While he was studying, he studied under the sage Asita, where Asita was the sage who predicted the life of Siddhartha Gautama. He was the one that told the king that your son will either become a great sage or he'll become a great ruler. And then in his youth, he acquired the nickname Kasana Manava, which means a young man with a golden skin. So he's similar to Mahakashyapa, to where Mahakashyapa had this golden hue to his skin as well, to where Mahakashyapa was a great goldsmith in a previous life, so that quality stayed with him. Mahakatyana was in a previous lifetime, he had offered a golden brick to a stupa of a Buddha. This Buddha was Buddha Kasyapa, and then with this golden brick, he vowed that he would have a golden complexion in a future life. And with his father's death, he became the new king's advisor of the state of Avanti, and one of his first tasks was to go find the Buddha and bring him to his palace so that he could have he could treat the Buddha. So Mahakatyana, he gathered up 7 of his friends and he journeyed to where the Buddha was staying. And upon finding the Buddha, he was already giving a Dharma talk. So him and the 7 other friends sat there and listened, and through this Dharma talk, they themselves became enlightened, and they wanted to ordain under the Buddha after their enlightenment. So their enlightenment happened rather quick, as opposed to like Shariputra, Mahamagdalena, where they needed time for their enlightenment. So to go back to Mahakatyana's name, his name means great literary elegance, but it also means great shoulders. because he himself had beautiful shoulders to look at under his robe. The name also means victorious thinker because of his eloquence, his persuasive discourse when he talked about the Dharma, which was considered unobstructed to have. The first one is, with unobstructed eloquence and Dharma, one can explain the Dharma without any obstacles. Second one, with unobstructed in meaning, one can explain the Dharma's limitless meanings. And number 3, with unobstructed eloquence and phrasing, one's rhetoric is effective. So this is kind of like, he's good at getting the point across. He's able to take these very brief statements by the Buddha or these short passages and go into detail on them and really get the point across. Number 4, with eloquence of unobstructed delight in speech. This means he has a good time just spreading the Dharma. It's something he was very passionate with. So with having this great persuasive power, he went back to the king and he had told him of his journeys. He became a disciple of the Buddha, and he told the king of the Buddha's Dharma. And with this, the king was very pleased. He decided to give Mahakatyana the king's park, to where he and other Buddhists could come and stay there when they needed a place of refuge. And so Mahakatyana really spent a lot of time at Avanti, but then he went back to where the Buddha was staying to hear a lot of his sermons. And through hearing a lot of the sermons, he was able to go back to Avanti and spread the Dharma. And with his persuasive discourse, he was able to ordain a lot of people. It was said that, the state sparkled with monk robes because there were so many people that wanted to ordain under the Buddha. So he just kind of had monks flowing into the Buddha's refuge. With this, Buddha has said he was foremost in debate as well, to where one of the debates that he had with a layperson was someone who was under the impression that when you die, that's just kind of it. This is that idea of annihilationism, to where you're kind of just given this life and there's nothing after that life. To where he said, the layman said, your life is kind of like a lamp. When the fire goes out, there's nothing left in you. To where he wasn't convinced of the ideas of rebirth, to where he said, well, when someone's reborn, you never see them come back and talk about their family and go, oh, it's me from a previous lifetime. So if he hasn't met anyone that's came back, he wasn't convinced that this was true. So he thought this was a false teaching. Or Mahakatyana asked the man, well, when you're in jail, are you able to get out of jail? And he goes, no, not really. Well, that's kind of what it's like to be in the hell realm, to where when you're reborn there, you're kind of just stuck. You're there to pay off your karmic debts, and thus you can't leave. To where it's a little more, it's worse than jail because the suffering there is much worse. But then he said, well, I guess that makes sense. You can't get out of hell, thus you can't come back. It was like, well, what about the devas? What about like the heavenly realms? Because they seem a lot more free. It seems like they could just come down to the earth and then tell their family, oh, it's me, everything's okay. And he said, well, that's a good point. I agree with you, but then also think about if you were to fall into a toilet, and not a small one, obviously, but like kind of a mass toilet. As soon as you come out of that, you go, well, I don't want to go back in that again. So you clean yourself off and you go about your life without this stench following you. And he tells the layman's like, well, that's kind of what like the world of man is. It's this place that's not very great, it's filthy, and as soon as you go to a heavenly realm, you're like, well, I'm not going to go back to that toilet anymore. I'm going to go back and live this better life. So it's one reason why you don't see devas really coming back to the earthly realm. But then another thing that he says that the time works differently in heavenly realms, where a singular day in one of those realms is equal to like lifetimes on earth. So he was saying as when devas get settled and comfortable in their heavenly realms, if they decide to come back, all their family and friends are dead because all these lifetimes have gone by. So that's why you don't see really anyone that's reborn in other realms come back to earth. And hearing this explanation, he was more convinced. He's like, okay, I can see why why rebirth is a reasonable idea. So the Mahakatyana just built up this reputation for being able to transmit the Dharma without the presence of the Buddha being there. And because of that, he's accredited to many discourses in Buddhist literature. One of those discourses is the Madara Sutra, in which after the Buddha's parinirvana, when he goes away into nirvana, the king comes back to talk with Mahakatyana, and he asks about the caste system at the time, because you had Brahmins, which are at the top, and you kind of go down the ranks to where you have the impoverished people at the bottom. And he was asking about, are the deeds, but do Brahmins have consequences of their actions? As in, do they reap the results of bad and good karma? And he says, well, what does he say? He's like, though wealth supplies power to anyone in the caste system, that power does not influence the results of good and bad actions. So though the Brahmins are all the way at the top, they have all this wealth, their actions still have consequences. So even the power of wealth cannot save you from the things that you've done, whether they be bad or good. If a Brahmin's committing those actions, there will be consequences. Same with people in poverty. They will also be experiencing those same results of their actions. So, and then also as a monk, Mahakatyana, he really abided by the precept of vegetarianism, to where that was his only diet, and he was, towards the end of his life, he contracted smallpox. And his doctor had told him, the diet that you have doesn't really provide the nutrients to fight this infection. He's like, I recommend that you go and eat some meat, particularly goat's meat, because at the time that was seen to cure smallpox. But he said, no, I'd rather die than break the precepts. So that's how he ended up dying. He died from smallpox because he took, he held the precepts tighter to himself than getting cured from his disease. So that is the first one, Mahakatyana, which is foremost in eloquence, which is persuasive discourse. The next one we'll talk about is Mahakastila, where we have talked about him before, but we didn't really give him a name. He is Shariputra's maternal uncle, to where, if you remember before when we talked about Shariputra, he was great in wisdom, so much so as then when his mother was pregnant with him, she would have debates with her brother, so his uncle, and she would always win. Whereas before, she was never a great debater, but while she was carrying Shariputra, she was winning all these debates against her brother. So much so that Mahakastila said, this isn't you arguing with me, this is your unborn son arguing with me. He's the one winning these debates, not you. So then he made it pretty much his life's goal to surpass his nephew in debate. So he went off to school to study the Vedic philosophies as well, to study means of debating with others. And it said that he studied so hard that he really didn't keep up with his hygiene. He devoured all of his meals so he could go and go study more in the hall, to where because he didn't really pay attention to himself, his only ambition was to study. He was seen as this haggard man, to where he acquired this nickname, the long-nailed Brahmin, because he just had these horribly looking claws because he just didn't take care of himself. So then when he felt like he could debate Shariputra and win, he went back to his sister, and she said, well, he's now ordained under the Buddha. He's one of his disciples. So he went to the Buddha, as we said, and he said, I would like to have my nephew back. I'd like to debate him. And he said, well, I can't really do that. He's mine now, but you can debate me. And if you win, then you can have Shariputra. But if you lose, then Mahakastila made the offer of his head if he lost. Well, obviously he lost to the Buddha, so he ran away in a cowardly rage, and as he was running away, he kind of convinced himself, maybe I should hold up my part of the deal. So he went back to the Buddha and said, as I said before I lost the debate, I'll give you my head. And the Buddha's like, no, that doesn't go along with my teachings. This isn't something you should be doing. What make an offer to you is you can ordain under me and I can become your teacher. And Mahakastila, he took up that offer. He became one of the arhats under the Buddha. And he is foremost in debate. I could not find too much about him. He's not really mentioned too much in any of the commentaries, so I will leave it at that with him. The next arhat is also in Shariputra's family. His name is Ravada. He is the youngest brother of Shariputra, where his name means prosperous because his parents prayed under the Ravati constellation at that time of the year for a son. So that constellation, Ravati, means prosperous, but in Indian astrology, there are 28 signs, and this is the last sign, to where this is similar to the like Western astrology, to where you have the 12, those 12 signs. I can't think of the word right now, but the zodiac signs. So this was similar to that. So they prayed underneath that constellation. And so him and Shariputra, they had a family of 8 brothers and sisters. There was 5 brothers and 3 sisters. So Shariputra being the oldest, he was the first one to go ordain under the Buddha. But then all of his brothers and sisters followed in their oldest brother's footsteps. So all the 3 sisters went to go become nuns under the Buddha. The other 3 brothers went to go become monks underneath the Buddha. And the mother's kind of just alarmed, going, I'm losing all my kids to the Buddha. I need to do something about this. So she made a deal with her last son. He's the one who's going to stay in the home life. I'm not going to allow him to go out and become a monk. So at the age of 7, she arranged a marriage for him to kind of trap him in the home life so he wouldn't go away to become a monk. But then on the evening of his marriage, or the night before his marriage, all the relatives were coming out and blessing the couple, going, oh, may you have a happy life, may you have a happy marriage. But then all the relatives came up to his fiancée and said, oh, may you live as long as your grandmother. And this kind of hit Ravati. He said, I guess I'd like to see your grandmother. And he was shown this woman of 120 years old who was just kind of there. She had no hair, no teeth, looked like a skeleton, and she was sickly too, to where she had these black sores all over her body. And upon seeing this, he goes, well, if my wife is beautiful now, she's probably going to end up looking like this in the future. I don't really want any part of this. And you could say that he had realized 2 of the 8 sufferings that the Buddha spoke of, old age and sickness, to where the other 6 of those sufferings I'll go over very quick. Those are birth, death, old age and sickness, which he had witnessed, the suffering of being away from loved ones, the suffering of being around people you dislike, the suffering of unfulfilled desires, and the suffering of the 5 aggregates, which of those 5, you probably know, which are form, feeling, mental formations, perceptions, and consciousness. So then upon this realization, he said, I'm not getting married, I'm not doing any of this. So on his wedding day, he just left home. He ran away and he wasn't going to come back. So then in his travels, he traveled mostly alone, and then on one night he was walking down the road and there was a shack there. And he decided, okay, this is where I'm going to stay during the night. And as he was about to fall asleep in the shack, these 2 ghosts walk up to the shack carrying this corpse. And they talk to Ravada and say, do you think we should eat this corpse or not? But what they really meant was, if you want us to eat this corpse, we're going to just throw it away and we're going to eat you instead. But if you say we're not going to eat this corpse, we're going to get hungry, and well, since we don't have the food to eat the corpse, we're going to eat you instead. So they were going to eat Ravada regardless of what he had said or not. But he didn't say anything. He was actually struck with fear, and the bigger ghost took the initiative to start eating him. But he didn't eat him, he ate the corpse. And it was said that he would eat the arms of the corpse, to where the smaller ghost would rip off the arms of Ravada and then replace those on the corpse. Then the larger ghost would eat the legs of Ravada, or eat the legs of the corpse, and then the small ghost would rip off the legs and then put it on the corpse. To where he had done this through all of the organs. He'd eat the head, he'd eat the heart, he'd eat the liver of the corpse, and then the small ghost would rip out those parts and replace them. To where eventually the whole body of the corpse was devoured, but it was replaced with all the parts of Ravada. And upon completion, Ravada thought, my body has been used to repair this corpse, so now I myself don't have a body. And then he woke up the next morning just maddened. He went running around the town, just explaining to everyone, I don't have a body, where's my body at? Do I have one or not? And everyone's going, I don't really understand what you're telling us. So he became known as this lunatic around town, just shouting, I don't have a body, I don't have a body. To where eventually he came to a monastery and he talked with two monks. He said, monks, do I have a body? And then the monks saw something in Ravada that revealed that he had great potential for enlightenment. So they had told Ravada this phrase that the body is basically created by a combination of causes and conditions. When the causes and conditions are separated, the body is destroyed. Thus, there is nothing that is you, and there is also nothing that is not you. This is pretty much to say that everything in the world is interconnected, to where there is no separate self between you and everything else around you. The body and everything are one in a sense. And upon hearing this, he realized the doctrine of no self, that the body is impermanent. You are not the body, and the body is not you. And so he reached the first stage of enlightenment, and he wanted to ordain under these monks and have them be his teachers. But they were kind of skeptical at first. They said, we don't really know who you are. But then as he told them, my brother is the great Shariputra, they go, oh, yeah, we'll we'll ordain you as a monk. So as the time went on, his teachers wanted him to become really great in meditation. So that's what they had him doing. So often, right outside the town where he was staying at the monastery was this huge forest, and that's where he would go to meditate. And upon going to the forest so often, he really developed this sense of delight and solitude, to where one day he was in the forest and he vowed to himself, I wish to attain the fruit of our hardship, and I won't go see the Buddha and my brother until I attain that fruit. And so like the Buddha himself, he sat there in the forest until he was able to rid himself of all defilements and thus attain our hardship. But then now it was the other way around. He didn't go see the Buddha, but then the Buddha heard about this, about him attaining arhatship, and he went to go see Ravada. So he brings with him Shariputra and all the other arhats at the time, but they had trouble finding Ravada because he was in the forest, secluded from everyone. But then as they were walking to where they thought he was, they were approaching all these other monks, and they said, have you seen Ravada? Also, what does his dwelling look like? To where some people that had seen him, they said, oh, it's very pretty. He's underneath the trees, and the light shines down on him. It's a very serene scene. So where other people are like, there's nothing really to see here. There's nothing special. It's just him sitting on the rocks. He doesn't have any shelter. He has nothing pleasing to look at. He's just kind of there. It's not worth the time. And to where they finally were able to find him, and they just kind of saw him there meditating. He was very content with where he was. He looked very fulfilled with that. And the Buddha had then asked him, he said, the forest is full of all these dangers. There's extreme cold, there's extreme heat, it rains, it snows, and then upon all that, there's also wild animals in the forest as well. You have the tigers, you have elephants, you have all of these other creatures that want to harm you, and you hear them scream throughout the woods. How does this make you feel, knowing being in this place of all this danger? And Ravada had told the Buddha, what actually brings me very much delight. I find joy in the forest. And this can be taken to see that he sees the forest for what it is. It's just a place where beings dwell. It's where you come for solitude. And with that, the Buddha had said this verse to him. Whether it is a village that is thickly shrouded by the 5 worldly pleasures, or forced away from these pleasures, or a low valley painted by streams and green within the dwelling at ease. In harmony with the 4 physical postures, the dwelling site of a noble arhat is a truly delightful place on the surface of the earth. This can be taken to mean because as the arhat sees things as they are, they don't hold attachment to where they are. They don't see it as a bad place, nor do they see it as a good place to be. It's just a place of what it is. So he was able to truly see things as they are. And then after saying this verse, the Buddha pronounced that Vada is, you are the foremost in forest dwelling. And it was during this time that many monks would go into the forest to meditate or to perform any duties that had been assigned to them. But most of the monks at the time were kind of weary of the forest. They needed to know everything about it, where they were staying, what were the conditions like, was it going to be hot, was it going to be cold, was there animals around. But then Ravada was more okay with what it was. He was like, this is the forest, I'm taking it as it is, the way that you truly should, without any attachment. And this title of forest dweller also implies of one being foremost in solitude and not being upset or confused by anything, because you see things as they are. You're not deluded with thoughts of good or bad or good and evil. So that is Vada. The next one we will go over is Suripantaka. His name means little roadside. He also has another brother who is Mahapantaka, which means big roadside. He is the older brother, and the reason why they were called roadside is because it was customary in this time for Indian women, before they were about to give birth, they would go home to their parents' house to give birth. But this mother was quite lazy to where she didn't go in time, so she delivered both of her sons on the road, thus naming them Little Roadside and Big Roadside. Big Roadside being the older brother and Little Roadside being the littler brother. But they weren't quite the same. I guess the Maha itself, the great part in the name, implies that the older brother was much more smart. He was more intelligent. He had more capacity to get things done, to where Suripantaka was seen as very dull. He was very dim-witted and quite stupid, if you want to say that. So then the older brother had taken the going forth, and he was a disciple of the Buddha. And though the younger brother, Suripantaka, was not as smart as him, he didn't quite have the capacity, he still wanted to ordain under the Buddha, so he went with him as well. But then at the monastery, Suripantaka was the slowest of all the monks there. He wasn't able to memorize any of the verses. He didn't really understand any of the Buddhist teachings, as he had the hardest time learning anything there or getting accustomed to that lifestyle. But the Buddha saw potential in him, so he commanded 500 of his arhats to help Suripantaka to learn in his studies, to where they just wanted him to learn a single verse. One of those singular verses that they wanted him to remember was, guard your mouth, unite your mind, with your body don't offend. Do not annoy a single living being, stay away from non-beneficial, bitter practices. Conduct like this can surely save the world. The meaning of this verse is to keep a pure mind, pure speech, and a pure body, to keep your actions to not harm living beings, do not cause affliction to others. It also means to not develop bad habits or partake in practices that don't benefit you or others. Because these meaningless activities don't help anybody. What you should be trying to do is develop beneficial habits, partake in beneficial practices that ultimately save the world, like this verse implies. But then even after all this rehearsal, all this teaching from other monks, he still wasn't able to keep in mind even half of the lines, where they come up to him and say, all right, it's time to recite this, and go, I don't know, I can't keep it. To where everyone became frustrated with him because he didn't have the memory, nor did he have the capacity to really retain any of the information. So among them, who was most upset with him was his older brother, so much so that he reprimanded him, saying, I don't know why you're at this monastery. You're wasting your time being here. You'd rather be in the home life. You shouldn't be here ultimately. And though Suripantaka, he was not the smartest, he did have a hot temper. So being reprimanded by his brother, he had told him, I really want to be here, and I'd rather die than not try to, attain enlightenment. So he took this to the extreme, to where he grabbed some rope, he went outside, and he was actually going to kill himself to prove his dedication to the practice. And as he was climbing up the tree, he was approached by the Buddha, and the Buddha had told him, he goes, your brother is your brother, but you are you. His path is his path, and your path is your own path. Even though he told you to leave this monastery, that choice is your own. He says, you can stay here, you are welcome to practice and cultivate your practice here. You don't need to listen to what your brother is saying. And this brought great contentment to Ravada or Suripantaka, to where, using his expedient means, the Buddha had gave him something that he could handle. He gave him a broom. He said, I need you to sweep around the temple. And also, while you're sweeping, I can give you a very, very simple verse, a very simple phrase to recite. This verse itself was only 2 words. It was sweep, clean. So as he would go around the temple, he would just sweep and clean. While he's doing that, he would recite the phrase sweep, clean. He said, while you do this will, not only are you sweeping away the dust of this temple, you're also sweeping away the dust of your mind and your heart. So he spent the next few weeks just doing that. He was dedicated to doing this one thing, sweeping and reciting the phrase, sweep clean. So where one day, it kind of occurred to him is that he said, well, the ground is clean, the ground has been swept, but is my mind clean and is it swept? And to what this means was to purify his own mind. He had these thoughts of doubt. He had these thoughts of that he couldn't do this wasn't for him, but he kind of brushed those away. It's like, this is okay. He was able to get rid of these afflictions, this sense of doubt, and to purify his own mind, to sweep away the dust like he was doing this around the temple. And through all this sweeping, he was able to cleanse himself of all this and to reach the highest purity. He did attain enlightenment. And this confused a lot of the other monks. They had said, well, how could this happen? He's the slowest one out of all of us. There's no way he's able to attain any of this. Though in his enlightenment, he was able to see very clearly afterwards. He was able to remember everything that was taught to him, and he became even more intelligent than his older brother. Everyone was just confused by this, but the Buddha had reassured him that in a previous life, Suripantaka, he himself was a great Dharma teacher, but he didn't want his own students to surpass him. He had the knowledge, but he wasn't willing to give everything to his students because he himself wanted to be the best one. But thinking in this way is a greedy way. It's similar to having all this money and you don't share any of that. So that's what he was doing. He had all these teachings that he could give, but he wasn't giving them to his own students. So in this life that he was living with Shakyamuni Buddha, he was seen as dull-witted and stupid. So this is kind of the result of his karmic offenses in a previous lifetime, to where, like I said, if you're greedy and wealthy in one life, the next one you'll be stricken with poverty. That's just kind of the cause and effect of that. Similarly, if you're great in teaching and you don't pass that on to anyone, that's also seen as greedy. So in the next life, you'll be seen as dim-witted and very dull. So that kind of goes to show that even though you can be stricken with you don't have you think you don't have the capability to go on in your practice. It's said that you look at Suripantaka, even you yourself can remember this, because we listen to music and we can remember the lyrics after just hearing it one time. He couldn't even do that. But so if he can achieve enlightenment even with his own capacity, you can too. This is to say that really to make the best out of your practice, whether it takes a long time or if it takes many lifetimes, as long as you're making progress down that path, you will reach the goal. It's to not get out of lazy habits and to not be comfortable with what you have. It's always to strive for something more, because everyone is capable of that. It's just if you're willing to put in that effort, like Suripantaka was. He just had one task. He was concentrated on that one task, and he was able to, with that simple task, to cleanse himself of everything that kept him from enlightenment. So he was seen as the one foremost in purity. So this is the next 4. We've gone over 7 so far. As Quang has said, these kind of get shorter. Probably because they go from like highest importance to lowest importance. So I don't know how many we'll go over next time, but I will do what I can to make it as engaging as possible. And with that, I will open it up to any questions if you have any. If there are no questions, I will hand it back over to Quang.
Thank you, Hien, for your enlightening storytelling. The last story of Suripantaka, another version of it, is that when the Buddha gave him the phrase of sweeping clean, he sent him to the nunnery to teach the nuns. And it was at the nunnery that he was sweeping and cleaning, and the nuns saw that, and a lot of them became enlightened and took him as their teacher as well. And that's why and then when the Buddha would ask the nuns, "Oh, how is Suripantaka?" And like, he's one of our best teachers we've ever had. Like, some of us have attained enlightenment, and one through whatever stage that they have attained, and that they praised him that he was an excellent teacher. And then part of that story is when his older brother got really upset and angry, like, there's no way that this idiot was able to teach and enlighten nuns, right? And all he did was sweeping clean, sweeping clean, sweeping clean. It's a pretty well-known story, because it shows that we don't have to do all these elaborate things that we think we need to do to become enlightened, right? There's dozens and dozens of stories of people becoming enlightened doing most mundane things, right? Walking, cleaning, cooking, folding their robes, right? It doesn't have to be such a dramatic experience to become enlightened. It can be the simplest things, because it's the simplest things that show the true reality of things, right? We don't have to create a whole movie, right? I mean, think of a movie, right? Think of a movie. Think of all the plot and the stories and the backstories and all these things. And at the end of it is when you know what it's all about. So you can condense an entire movie script into one page, right? You can say, this is what's happening and this is what happened, right? It's that simple. Likewise, our enlightenment can become the same thing. We don't have to go through all this story and watch this entire movie. You can just simplify it into a few words or a few pages in this case, right? And that's how a lot of the arhats became enlightened through, like, I mean, look at the other stories that all the other monks have attained enlightenment. Like, they're simple, right? And that's how enlightenment should happen. That's how enlightenment can happen. But we've lost that type of what's a good word? Confidence in enlightenment nowadays, right? Because we just think it's some sort of magical, supernatural, dramatic experience, right? And so we've kind of lost touch with the simplicity of our practice, when the practice can just be simple, right? I mean, ask Quang Hien. Our daily life is to get up in the morning, meditate, do chores, study, eat, sleep, get up and repeat. Like, that's a simple life. We don't need more than that to become enlightened. You have to do so much in order to attain little, right? Eat less, sleep less, study more. That's our motto, right? And that's all you need. That's all we need. And so this is why I mentioned that some of these stories that we need to bring up hopefully inspires confidence, inspires inspiration, that it's not hard to become enlightened. I say that in quotations because it is hard, but it's not, right? It's not impossible, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just a matter of removing the obstacles that we believe are obstacles, right? Because think of your life. Think of what you think are obstacles in your life. Some of us may say, oh, my family is an obstacle, my job's an obstacle, my relationships are obstacles, just my daily tasks are obstacles. These are not really obstacles. These are just part of your lives, right? This is what I hope you chose to do, right? I'm hoping you chose to have a family. You chose to have the job you have. You chose the friends you're with. You chose the type of life you have. These are choices you make, right? Or choices that you made. And so to be upset that you have them is nonsensical, right? To be upset that you believe that these are challenges are nonsensical. These are just simple life facts, right? And so instead of seeing them of, oh, I don't have time to practice, I don't have time to study because of these things, doesn't make any sense, right? Because you've added all that to your list of daily activity, life, family, friends, job, etc. All you have to do is just add one more to it, right? We need to make the decision to add one more to our endless list of things to do, just to study and practice, right? That is another choice you add to your list of choices. If you don't want to have a relationship, if you don't want to have a job, if you don't want to have friends, you don't want to do that, well, guess what? You have a choice to eradicate those two. But we can't use those as excuses to negate our practice of, I don't have time, I don't have the patience, I don't have the energy, whatever excuse we want to use. Because the more we practice, right? And you already know me. When I teach, I'm very analytical. I go in depth into things, right? I give a lot of detail, and I make it seem sometimes maybe unattainable, which is my own fault. But one of the reasons I teach the way I teach, and I think I mentioned this before, is one, the way I teach is the way I would want to be taught, right? Like, just that's typically just how my mind works. But secondly, the bigger things that you know, right? The bigger topics that you know sooner in life, the more time you have them to let them kind of sink into the mind, right? That way, as you go through your practice and you go through your studies, right, those are always somewhere in your consciousness, right? And they can always, every once in a while, you have a little blimp of, oh, I remember this teaching, I remember this, type of difficult practice or teaching, whatever it may be, and you can utilize it in everyday life. That way, the simple things, right, become the mundane Yeah, the simple things, the mundane things you do. The reason why you can become enlightened because of those mundane, simple tasks is because you know the bigger teachings that are the foundation to that simplicity, right? So, for instance, in Rivada's story, right, he became enlightened because of the realization of non-self. But he had to go through all those things, all those stories, all the struggles and experiences in order to see non-self, right? Non-self is a huge topic, right? But the means of him becoming enlightened was such a simple act, right? But it's based on a bigger concept. So that's one of the reasons why I teach big, is so that when you're able to, when you walk to your car, you become enlightened. That's my hope, right? But as Quang mentioned, it's knowing that we have the capacity, the capability to become enlightened. We just have to put in the work, right? Put in the effort. Know that this is an opportunity. Know that the struggles and difficulties in life are going to be there whether you want them or not, right? In life, there is suffering. It's literally the very first noble truth. In life, there is suffering. You're going to suffer whether you want to or not, right? As an unenlightened person, you're going to suffer whether you want to or not. So to become enlightened and to eradicate that suffering, backtrack. To eradicate that suffering, get rid of that suffering, well, we have to become enlightened, right? And once you become enlightened, then, or as you're on the path of enlightenment, as you start to come to realizations and come to some of these aha moments, and you'll see that, you know what, this struggle that I think is a struggle in my life really isn't that big of a deal. It isn't really that much of a struggle, right? It's just inconvenient, right? In some monasteries, thankfully we don't do it, but in some monasteries, their day starts at 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. To me, that's way, way too early, right? It's so early that, at least in Mahayana traditions, at least in Chinese and Vietnamese, that the morning chanting session is actually called the late night chanting session. So our very morning session is called Kung Fu Hue. Kung Fu Hue literally means late night chanting. Thankfully, we don't wake up that early. But to a lot of people, that can seem like a struggle to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to meditate and to chant. Like, I'm not even all there to be doing something as heavy as chanting and meditating, right? So they see that as a struggle, and they use that as an excuse to not ordain or not to continue becoming or to stay in the monastery, right? That becomes a hindrance that, you know what, I just don't want to wake up that early. You're telling me you don't want to be free from suffering because you don't want to wake up early? Well, guess what? I don't want to go to work, but I got to make money. I got to support my family. I got to support myself. We do things we don't want to do all the time, right? And so we have to really, again, we're questioning ourselves. Well, why don't I want to wake up early? Why don't I want to wake up at 3:30? Well, because I want to sleep. I want to enjoy my sleep. I don't want to have to sleep or go to bed at 8 or 9 p.m., right? You start to really see the stupidity in our way of thinking sometimes, right? And the nonsense, the excuses we make to not want to do something that can extremely benefit you. Extremely benefit you, right? That's why we go to college. I'm not saying every college degree is beneficial, that will help you in life, but in a lot of cases, especially in specialties, right, like medicine or law or physics or whatever, we need specialty degrees, right? And without it, you can't work in the field you want to work, right? So that's a a struggle. Or if you want to take care of your family, then you need a good job to be able to support yourself. If you want this, you want that, like you have to do things, right? And so if you do things that you don't really want to do for everyday task and everyday things, well, why aren't you doing this to eliminate all that suffering, right? One realization can eliminate every single suffering you've ever had and ever will have in life. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. This isn't my downward talk. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts for Quang Hien. Or me, I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I like the last two, Ravada and Sudi Pantaka. I thought those were very interesting.
I hope the contrast of our types of Dharma talks is beneficial to everyone. If there are no questions, then a reminder: next Saturday is our retreat. Right? Yes. Oof, it's already here. I'm slightly unprepared. But that's not your problem, it's mine. So Saturday, we'll have our retreats. It's our full day retreat, so it'll be 6 a.m., 6 p.m. I hope that I will see everyone there. And for those that are not here or watching or will be watching, please feel free to register so I know a good head count, how much food I need to prepare, or we need to prepare. But I think this will, at least for me, this will be probably one of my most difficult retreats to teach because the topic is a pretty big topic. The topic this year is letting go of attachments, right? I'm sorry, what was the top title?
It's called Letting Go, Working with Attachments.
Letting Go, Working with Attachments, which is a very big topic, and I only have 3 sessions of talking. So I am struggling to find the correct formula. But regardless, we will all have methods to help enlighten our minds into what is causing us to suffer from attachments and how to let go of attachments. I hope that's the idea. But regardless, it will be a fruitful retreat. For our summer retreats. But anyway, besides the point. So we'll not have, since it's on a meditation class day, of course we won't have a meditation class at 10 a.m. In lieu of the retreat. So I hope everyone to please join us. Please arrive at least 20 minutes early so we have time to get everyone set up and robed up and seated. I would like to start promptly at 6 a.m. for our opening ceremony. The earlier we start, the more I can talk, basically, is what I'm trying to get to, for all our sakes. Okay, you're at time, so if there are no more questions, please join me in invoking Buddha's name 3 times and transferring the merit. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Thank you. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.